Hi guys, Miss Navarro here, and I want to ask you guys if you know what kind of insect this is. I'll give you a hint. Oftentimes this insect goes buzz, buzz, and sometimes you'll find this insect discovering something in a flower. Do you know what this is? Yes, it's a bee. Now, some people are kind of afraid of bees because they know that they have stingers, but truly, most of the time, bees are really actually nice animals, and we really need bees. We need bees for a lot of reasons, and I'm going to read a story today so we can kind of figure out what those reasons are. So, my friend Mr. Bee is just going to hang out next to me, and I'm going to read a story for you guys called, this is called The Bee. So I want you to listen closely to hear what Miss Navarro has figured out about bees. Let's open it up. Oh my goodness! Who do we have here? Here in this book, we have Mr. Bee. Oh my goodness. If I'm looking at Mr. Bee, I'm noticing some things about him. I notice he has two antennas, two wings, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 legs. And it looks like he has 1, 2, 3, 3 body parts. Wow. Mr. Bee is an insect. So let's read a little bit about the bee, and then we are actually going to draw a picture of a bee. The bee. Mom, I've been stung by a bee. For most people, they hear the word bee and it kind of makes them think of a honeybee, a bumblebee, or maybe a yellow jacket wasp. But there's actually 30,000 different types of bees in the world. Bees are found almost everywhere, but most are buzzing over warm, dry areas. They range from size of little gnats to sizes of hummingbirds. Some bees are brightly colored while others are drab brown. Some are mostly hairless and shiny, and others are extremely fuzzy. Most bees do not nest in man-made hives, but build their homes underground or in hollowed-out plant stems. Only female bees build nests. The nesting and life cycle behaviors of bees are closely linked to the growth cycles of flowering plants, on which they depend on for food. So bees get their food from flowering plants. This relationship is very important. Bees need flowers for food, while many plants depend on bees for pollination. Thus, while bees may be considered pests, they are essential for the survival of humans and other animals. All bees are insects that evolved over time from flower-visiting wasps. But instead of catching insects or spiders like wasps do to feed their young, bees collect pollen and nectar. If you look closely, you see that the bee's body hair is branched or feathery, while the wasp has straight hairs. There's the bee. What's a bumblebee? Most people have heard about humble bumblebees, which belong to a group of insects. Bumblebees are relatively large and fuzzy and oftentimes black and yellow. All 30 or so species can be arranged into two groups, true bumblebees and cuckoo bumblebees. True bumblebees have a scientific name called bombus, which actually means booming. Bees are also known for nest building. A bumblebee's nest is sheltered in a place where food is stored and young bees are raised. A bumblebee is entering a nest right here. Here's a bumblebee entering a nest. That right there, my friends, looks like it's a beehive. Let's read and see what it says. Inside a bumblebee nest, some pollen and honey are stored, and young bees are tended by adult bees. Bees are social insects, similar to honeybees and termites. They nest together in a family or group, consisting of a queen bee or mother, working daughters, and some drone sons. A bumblebee colony can contain from few to about 400 bees, and it generally exists only from spring until fall. Bees are very important to the life cycle of flowers. Bees' life cycle are very similar to all insect life cycles. This is how it goes. So, male and female bees mate in the fall. Newly mated queens hibernate underground during the winter. After emerging in the spring, a queen feeds and searches for a nesting place. Within her nest, a queen builds pots for storing honey and pollen and lays her eggs. And over the summer, the nest increases in size, and this queen and her daughters make more waxen containers for holding food and young. And so this right here is the life cycle of the bee. And then if we go over here, we can find that an orchid bee inside the petals of an orchid flower extends its long tongue like a straw into a nectar-producing area. This is really important because it is how pollination works. Honeybees are also very important. Honeybees have been valued since the ancient times for the sweet honey that they produce. Honeybees have been domesticated, kept in hives, or transported like pets. Whether living in a man-made box or in a bee yard, or in a wild hollow tree in the woods, honeybees are social insects. Unlike the social bumblebees, honeybees can survive in the winter as an entire colony by feeding the honey that they have stored. Honeybees are very, very busy bees. So guys, the overall message of this story is that there are a lot of different kinds of bees. As I scroll through the story, I see that there are so many different kinds and varieties of bees, it's almost hard to count. But there is something really important that we need to address, and it's called pollination. Pollination is what we are going to be talking about for our activity today. So, I will read to you guys what pollination is. Bees can pollinate flowers better than any other kind of insect, and bumblebees, which visit many different flowers, are very important pollinators. Most cultivated crops and wildflowers could not exist without bee visits. Unaware that they are helping plants, bees are visits. Bees simply try to find enough nectar and pollen to live. Bumblebees are excellent pollinators for several reasons. Because they are able to control their body temperatures, bumblebees can visit flowers early or late in the day when low temperatures prevent other bees from flying. This is very important because when the bees fly from various flowers, they transport pollen. Bees are able to visit many different flowers, and an individual bee will visit only one or two types of flower on each collecting trip. She learns how to best get the nectar and pollen from each certain type of flower when she quickly visits all the flowers in that area. A bumblebee will most likely remain faithful to a particular flower as long as the food is plentiful or rich. When nectar or pollen are scarce or of poor quality in her favorite plant, she will probably switch. This is very important because it is kind of how pollination works. The bumblebee gathers the pollen from her body hairs and carefully packs them into her pollen baskets for returning to her nest. Not all bee species are able to vibrate flowers. Honeybees can't, so they might visit after a bumblebee leaves, picking up pollen grains that have been left behind. And you can see that this is the bee pollinating the flower right there. So that is actually the exact image that we are going to draw. We are going to draw the inside of a flower, so it's really important that we look at these parts right here. So Ms. Navarro is going to kind of leave her book out so we can refer to it because we are going to go over the parts of a flower. The parts of a flower are very important for the pollination of bees because bees are attracted to two very important parts of the flower, and that's how pollination works. So the first thing we need to review is that flowers make pollen. Pollen is a fine powder that is made by flowers, and that sometimes if you sniff it, it can make you sneeze. But pollen is important because flowers use pollen to make seeds, and seeds are used to make fruit and other flowers. So pollen creates seeds that flowers use to grow fruit. So flowers and pollen is actually really important to not only bees, but also humans because we eat the fruit that it turns into. So we know that pollen is made from flowers, but pollen is made from a very specific part of a flower. If you look here, I am going to draw the parts of a flower. Now, I want you to follow along with me as I draw my flower, and then once I am done, you can go back and draw your flower. So Miss Navarro is going to draw the stem of her flower. And then I'm going to draw some petals on my flower. And this is a flower view outside looking in. By that, I mean you can see the inside of the flower, and these are the petals. Now, I have drawn my petals, and I know it kind of looks a little different than how we normally do our flowers, but that's because we are looking at it from the inside. And now I am going to draw this very important part of the flower, and this is called the pistil. Now, the pistil is where the bee takes the pollen that it gets from a different part of the flower. The pistil is very important because it is the female part of the flower. And this is what is in charge of growing the seeds that turn into fruit. So we are going to label this part of the flower the pistil. P I I S T I O L. This is called the pistil. And as you can see, the pistil has a very fat bottom. So what happens is the bee gets the pollen from this part of the flower, which we are about to go over, and it brings it to another flower's pistil and it lands the pollen there. When the pollen lands there, it goes down into the center of the pistil, and that's how seeds are created and fruit then grows. That process is called pollination. So where do the bees get the pollen, you ask? They get the pollen from this part of the flower. This is the male part of the flower, and it's called the stamen. The stamen normally has a few parts to it, but it is the part of the flower that actually produces the pollen. So the bee will fly to the stamen, and it'll pick up the pollen and it'll have it all over its body, and then it'll fly to another flower and it'll drop it in its pistil, and then that's how the seeds are created, and then fruit can grow from that exact process. So this is important because it's called the stamen. The stamen is the male part of the flower. So as you can see, guys, we have listed the parts of our flower. We have our petals, and then we have the female part of the flower called the pistil, where the pollen needs to go in order for the flower to produce seeds. And then we have the stamen, which is the male part of the flower, where the bees go and get the pollen from and take it from flower to flower. And this process is called pollination. So at the top of our paper, we are going to list it pollination. P-A-O L L L I N N A T I O N. Pollination. Great. So now that we have named it pollination, we need to make this picture actually pollination. We have listed the parts of our flower, the pistil and the stamen. But now we need to show our bee actually pollinating. So what we are going to do is some actual finger painting. If you have some paint that is yellow or orange or maybe even a light brown, whatever color you want your bee to be, I would like you to go find it and put paint on your finger. Now, Miss Navarro actually doesn't have any paint, so I'm just going to use an orange marker. This actually does work because if you just draw some orange marker on your finger and press it down, it'll actually show up as the same color as a bee. I'll show you right now. So guys, Miss Navarro got her yellow marker, and now I'm going to draw a bee right here going into one of the stamens, pollinating and getting pollen from it. So I'm going to grab a yellow marker and I am going to color my finger. Like I said, if you have a yellow marker and you don't mind coloring your finger, go ahead and do it because you just are going to put color on it to make your bee. If not, if you have paint and you'd rather use that, go ahead and use that. So I've colored my finger and now I'm going to press it down, and that is going to be the body of my bee. So now that I have done that part, I'm going to draw the head to my bee. So I'm going to draw my bee's head. and it's 2 antennas. And I'm going to give my bee 6 legs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to make sure I give my bee its 2 wings. And I'm going to give, so that is 1 pair of wings, and this is going to be the other pair of wings, because if you remember, a bee has 4 wings. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw the lines on my bee. And I'm going to make its little back bottom black. So you can see that Miss Navarro drew her bee pollinating the flower. You can draw this exactly too. You can draw 1 bee or you can draw 2 bees pollinating the flower. So I'm going to draw a bee getting the pollen from the pistil, and then I'm going to draw a bee over here dropping the pollen into the stamen. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. I'm going to draw a bee getting the pollen from the stamen and then dropping the pollen into the pistil. So I'm going to repeat this, and I'm going to put some orange marker on my finger. Bees come in all different colors, yellow, orange. And I'm going to draw the head of my bee. I'm going to draw its 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 legs, its 2 wings, and its stripes. Now you can see Miss Navarro has drawn her 2 bees. Now I did 2 sets of wings on this bee, and I kind of think it looks better just to do 1 set of wings, but you can really do it however you would like. This is totally up to you. But now to conclude our entire lesson, this is a lesson on pollination. We learned that pollination is important for bees, for flowers, and for humans. And we know this because a bee will oftentimes go to look for food through a flower. So a bee will fly to a flower and it'll go look for food and nectar, and it will get covered by pollen from the male part of the plant, which is called the stamen. The bee will get covered in pollen, and then it'll fly to another flower. It will then drop parts of that pollen into the female part of the plant called the pistil. The pollen drops down from the pistil, and that's how the flower produces seeds that grow into fruits. So this process is really important because all the fruits we eat actually come from a process like this. In the same way, it actually benefits not only the flower, but also the bees. So pollination is really important. After you finish this drawing, I want you to color in the grass at the bottom green, color in your flower petals a certain color, and then you can color in your pistil and stamen 2 different colors as well. You can have a lot of freedom in what color you would like to color it. I will leave it up to you. But the most important part is you use finger painting for the bees that are pollinating from the flower. So if you have any questions, just let me know. I will post my final product on the Facebook page.